A scientist seeking adventure amidst the crumbling world meets a dying synthetic woman who needs his help. Jill laments how everything in the universe changes and dies. She believes that two particles becoming entangled would prevent decay, so she pleads to her companion, Ed Morris, for help since she's alone and running out of time. Suddenly, her face and body wither until her bones start to crack, horrifying the man. Ed wakes up in his boat, hearing a song from his record player. Outside, he views the great sea and feels hopeful. He returns home and tells his wife, Sally, that he's almost finished the decks. Receiving her warm embrace, the man notes how lucky he is to have her. Without responding to that, Sally tells him they have a visitor who's selling life insurance. To Ed's surprise, it's Jill who greets him with a smile. 7 days earlier, Sally listened to a report about extreme weather conditions that forced people to flee their homes. During this, she made sure no one was watching before she took a plant from her shelf to let it have some sun. She then mentioned to Ed that a neighbor's house collapsed into the water, so she worried that it might happen to them. Her husband assured her that they'd be gone before that happened, as he planned to sail the seas with her. He stood up, and Sally immediately hit her plant. As his wife prepared their breakfast, Ed tried to get her excited about sailing, quoting an ad he saw that encouraged them to squeeze the day. His mood shifted when Sally noticed that their eggs had expired, despite them being only 2 days old. While heading out, the couple noticed the garbage man collecting their waste. He told them to keep an eye on the expiration date of their food and to live for today. Soon, Sally drove up to the Chimera farm, where she greeted a pig-headed lady named Sue. At Ed's workplace called Spirit Mill, a tour guide explained their building's neighborly atmosphere. Security only required sweat, print, and voice recognition, thus reducing the need for inspections. They produce cognitive chimeras, such as Jacks, Jills, and other sentient fusions. The guide notes that these chimeras were present throughout their world and that they wouldn't even know if one was among the group now. Coincidentally, Jill was in this tour group. He continued how surgical implantations of quantum consciousness, or QCs, have revolutionized the relationships between humans and chimeras. To prove this, the tour guide admitted that he was a Jack. This earned him applause from his audience. In the lab, Ed worked while the tour group looked around. Then he spotted Jill, who noted how beautiful the QCs were. He agreed, explaining that QCs were a product of human and porcine genetics. Jill then wondered if QCs could think or dream, but Ed responded that they needed experience as they were still latent potential. He wondered if she worked in the field, but Jill clarified that she worked in life insurance. She asked if she could see a QC, so the man showed her a tube that contained QCs, known as a berry. He stressed that inside the berry, the QC was self-contained like an egg, but if it were released from the tube, it would vanish. He added that with no QC, there was no life. As he explained, Jill nervously played with her brush until it fell on the floor, so Ed picked it up. Later, the director hosted a demonstration of implanting QCs into synthetic human shells. These shells were called Jacks for males and Jills for females. The director explained that without QCs, these shells had no self-awareness, despite the skills and knowledge they implanted in them. The scientist then implanted QCs into the shells, making Jill nervous. Soon, the other Jacks and Jills awakened, and the director asked one what she was thinking. She pondered over this until she beamed that she was thinking about thinking. The audience then applauded as the shells now had consciousness. As Ed drove home later, he saw Jill on the ground, looking weak. Concerned, he offered to give her a lift, so she introduced herself as Jill, confirming that she was also a synthetic Jill. At a bar, Ed noticed that Jill was already failing, so he asked how much time she had left. Offended, she complained how normal people think it was okay to ask questions they'd never ask each other. Ed apologized and insisted that he believed that chimeras and synthetics should be treated equally to humans. Changing topics, Jill asked about Ed's personal life, and he shared that he was married but childless despite their year-long attempts. Given their collapsing environment, Jill asked how long his house could be standing, so Ed admitted that coastal erosion would probably destroy it in a year, but he planned on a voyage on the high seas. This seemed to impress Jill. That evening, Sally dreamed of her plant sprouting, which delighted her. Waking up, she noticed that her husband was out of bed and found him working on a map. Ed was mapping where they'd go to escape the city, but Sally pointed out there was nothing in the open seas and that leaving was illegal. When Ed tried to argue, Sally stressed that his ideas were just fantasies, so they should just relocate. Ed seemed stunned about this, so Sally turned away, noting that their vegetables had spoiled even though they just arrived earlier that day. Angry, Ed complained about the shorter expiration date to the waste collector the following morning. The man simply left it off. As Sally drove to work, she was still concerned about Ed's plans, so she asked Sue's opinion. However, the Chimera woman can't relate since she wasn't allowed to marry. Still, Sally asked for advice on what to do if a friend's husband might do something illegal. Sue agreed that such actions were punishable but stressed that their conscience should make exceptions. When asked if she treated her husband, Sally pondered over it before saying that she thought so. Sue joked about trusting someone with their heart, though she clarified that she didn't mean the actual organ. She then segued to commenting how some humans have porcine hearts, so normality constantly changed. Sally clarified if she meant normalcy for normal humans, so Sue noted that she was 40% normal. Realizing what she'd said, the woman apologized, but the Chimera assured her that she was bred not to take offense. Meanwhile, Ed sang a song to open his lab. While working, his mind was still plagued with questions about consciousness, so he grabbed a berry and asked it what it dreamed of. At home, Sally finally showed him the plants that she had grown. She was hesitant, given that growing plants was illegal, but Ed was impressed. Proud, Sally also showed him how she preserved some potatoes that had started sprouting. Inspired, Ed took a shovel outside to plant the potatoes. Sally followed him, though apprehensive since they could get arrested for doing so. As he shoveled soil, Sally tried to keep things casual and hid the potatoes. In the end, however, Ed found metal inches below the earth. No matter where he dug, their entire land was covered in metal, preventing anyone from planting. Sally suggested applying for an early transfer to move, but Ed complained that every land was the same. This made him hopeless just as the potatoes started to rot. That night, Jill and Ed met at the bar, where he shared his doubts about his voyaging plans. However, Jill teased an idea to make his fantasy a reality. She noted that QCs were sold at a high price in the black market, enough to provide him with a new lifestyle and for her to have a new life. Ed thought this was crazy and considered leaving, but Jill teased that he wouldn't. By dawn, Ed sat with Jill in his boat and removed his wedding ring. He then dipped his hand into a mold, providing Jill with a glove that had his prints. He then taught her to sing his voice code to enter his lab. Using these, Jill and her accomplices snuck into the lab to steal QCs. Ed watched her progress from a computer at home, but Sally arrived and checked on him. Seeing his wife made him realize what he risked, so he alerted security from his home, confessing to Sally that he did something stupid. Despite this, Jill and her team escaped and met with their buyer in a forest. When Jill stepped out, the leader, Noah, chuckled, calling her a living doll. This offended her, so she turned away, but he urged her to show them the QCs. Her accomplice brought out the case, but as Noah checked, Jill took one berry, insisting only selling 9. Noah wanted 10, but realized that Jill was taking one since she was dying. Suddenly, he grabbed the berry from her hand and his men opened fire, killing her teammates. Jill quickly ran as they shot at her, but she escaped. When Ed went to work the next day, everyone applauded him for raising the alarm last night. Because of this, the director gave him a raise despite Ed's hesitance. Ed asked if the thief had been found, so his boss noted that Jill was behind it and she was still on the run. There were rumors that it was an inside job, but Ed insisted that everyone at Spirit Mill was loyal. Despite this, the director thought that people could still get desperate. Meanwhile, Sally confided in Sue again. She stressed that her friend's husband was an honest man, so he was probably tempted into doing something. Sue wondered if the man was honest with his wife, so Sally confirmed. Hearing this, the Chimera woman advised that a wife should stand by her husband, as the truth always sets them free. Sue commented that Sally was a good woman, and Sally finally shared her name with the Chimera. This delighted Sue, calling the gesture generous. Later, Jill marched down the road and knocked at Ed's home, where Sally was alone. Thinking she was selling something, Sally closed the door on her. However, she suddenly heard Jill collapsing, so she invited her inside. Inside, Jill explained that her condition was a side effect of IVF. Sally empathized since she'd done IVF before. Jill explained that she'd been trying for too long. However, one side of a couple always wanted it more than the other. Sally then apologized for turning her away earlier since they got a lot of cold callers at home. She shared that she even had a nightmare about a salesman that didn't take no for an answer. Jill commented that some think that dreams mean the opposite, but she didn't believe in dreams since she lived for the present. Curious, Sally asked what she was selling, so Jill shared that it was life insurance. At present, Ed wakes up from his boat and finds Jill in his living room. She offers them a double indemnity policy which would award the beneficiary twice the face value in case of accidental death. Jill stresses that bad things happen all the time and people can't handle important decisions when it does. Ed refuses, but Jill encourages him to let Sally be taken care of in case something happens to him. With that, she hands them the paper so they can think about it before she gets up to leave. However, Jill struggles to stand, so Sally helps her. She then scolds her husband for not helping, so Ed suggests contacting Jill's husband, but the woman refuses. Ed points out that Jill brought her luggage as if she planned this. However, his wife sympathizes with the woman since she's undergoing IVF. Ed points out that Jill is lying because she's a synthetic who doesn't have a husband. However, Sally already knows about this but insists that the woman can want a child without a husband. Later, Jill looks around their house and sees a piece of leaf from Sally's plant. She then whispers the woman's name, making Sally wake up. Ed later sees Jill outside, so he confronts her about being in his house, asking what she wants. Jill insists that she wants to live, but her buyers took all the stolen QCs. Ed refuses to help, but Jill hints that he helped before to save her. Ed insists that he doesn't want anything to do with her, so Jill presents him with the glove they made to give her his prints. She notes that he already gave her everything. However, she hands the glove back to him, allowing Ed to turn her in if he chooses. Conflicted, Ed stresses that he's the wrong man since he only does his work and lives his life. However, Jill reminds him about his dream to sail away, noting that that's what his heart wants. Begging him, she tells him that she needs him, not anyone else. This convinces Ed, so he goes to work and takes a device to implant a QC. At night, he returns home and Sally notices that he's arriving late. Ed excuses that he met up with friends, which she doubts. Then, she declares that she wants to sign up for the double indemnity, sharing that she had coffee with Jill, who convinced her. To appease his wife, Ed signs the insurance papers the next day. Suddenly, the waste collector knocks on their door to warn them about the plant Sally grew, reminding them that it's illegal. Later, Ed meets up with Jill at the pub. However, she's failing and blood drips from her eyes. Ed holds her hand, encouraging her to continue with the heist so they can get a fresh start. The two then kiss as Ed becomes affectionate to the synthetic woman. Afterward, Jill presents a gun to Ed, which shocks him. They proceed to the forest to meet up with the gang who took the QCs and unexpectedly see a girl singing. At the hideout, Noah offers to sell them the same QCs that Jill brought, but Ed asks if they're in the correct homeostasis. Sensing Jill's desperation, Noah approaches her and notes that she's getting old, offending her. Ed then insists on examining the QCs, so Noah allows them to check. Upon opening a berry, Ed notes that there are early signs of desiccation, so he insists on testing it. Noah warns that if they use it before buying it, they won't be going anywhere afterward. With that, Ed inserts the QC on Jill. Upon receiving it, she freezes in place and becomes unresponsive. Ed confronts Noah, accusing them of tampering with the QC. With them distracted, Jill starts shooting the gang, and Ed takes the rest of the QCs. They escape, and Jill shoots the other members outside. Someone aims a gun at the singing girl, and to their surprise, it's the Spirit Mill's director. He thanks Ed and commends Jill for successfully manipulating him. However, he intends to retrieve the stolen QCs, so he threatens to shoot the girl. Seeing this, Jill throws her gun away, and Ed hands over the case with the QCs. Upon seeing what's inside, the director complains that there are only 9, so he threatens to blow the 10th one out of Jill. Ed begs him to stop and prepares the device to take it out of Jill. She begs him not to, as she'd die either way, and the director laughs, stressing that she's a synthetic human who's getting recalled. He warns Ed that he'd be arrested if he doesn't follow, so the man prepares the device. Desperate, Jill reminds him about his fantasy of sailing with her. Still, the director pins her to the ground and Ed approaches to eject the QC from her. As if to say goodbye, Jill tells Ed that she loves him. This makes him pause, so the director takes the device from his hands. Ed holds her hand as the director prepares to remove her QC. Suddenly, the girl discreetly returns Jill's gun to her, allowing her to kill the director. Finally free, Jill tells Ed that he disappointed her for not fighting for her. She hints that he also disappointed Sally, as he chased the fantasy but only half-heartedly. Thus, she leaves with a case of QCs. Later, an armed Jill knocks on Sally's door. Soon, Ed runs home but only finds a letter from Sally. In her letter, she wonders what being normal means. She intends to find out, so she'll squeeze the day, as Ed told her. Suddenly, the land begins to crumble, destroying their house. Ed rushes to his boat to escape, but as he travels through the sea, he finds Jill's brooch. He turns and finds Jill and Sally on the boat. Ed is happy to see his wife and apologizes. However, Jill says they're also sorry. Sally notes that they deserve better, and Ed realizes that Jill told his wife what he'd been doing and planning with her. He defends that he wasn't really going to abandon his wife, but the women throw him off the boat, choosing each other over the helpless man. Soon, Ed wakes up by the shore near his wrecked house. He finds his vinyl there and hugs it, taking comfort in the only thing he has left after his gamble failed.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.